The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Hooray for Hollywood, where stars are living large, in mansions with their servants and their credit cards in charge, with fame that's fleeting, but the egos never change, where everyone's a genius, except the ones who really arrange. Hooray for Hollywood, where the scandals always sell, where every whispered secret is a new tabloid's tell. Oh, how we adore the endless red carpet galore. Hooray for Hollywood, where less is always more.
Yes, it's the year of our Lord 2025, and less is still always more.
Woohoo!
Babies and dolls. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you, my pretties, are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Yay! Guys, I'd like to congratulate all of us and everyone who's still listening on a successful revolution of the Earth around the sun. We have now begun the year 2025, and we can promise you more of the same, much like the material we'll be discussing all year long.
Hey, Robert.
Your level of optimism is just astounding, Mr. Winfree.
Truly staggering, and you can hear Alexis, who will be joining us, and nice to have you back, Alexis.
Buonasera.
We also will have Dorian Price intermittently, allegedly. We'll find out. Again, we'll find out. If you're watching on video, you can see his screen there. So when he's able to be on, he'll be on. And
Allegedly, Chris Owen from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do said he wanted to be on. I sent him the link. At this point, we're just the Little Rascals Clubhouse. People will come in and out as they please.
Well, in all fairness, the Midwest and a lot of us are dealing with a really nasty snowstorm blizzard that moved through. So if some of us are having trouble connecting to the internet and trying to get a stable go to StreamYard.
It was like 50 in Florida today. I had to put a coat on.
Hey, I know people who would kill for like an inch of snow right now where I am.
Yeah, sorry. I'd like to remind you of my beat-up Honda that didn't survive this weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay. You didn't get hurt. Robert, you've been trying to talk for like 20 minutes now. Go ahead.
Well, Mark, you're taking my spot this week. You are infringing upon my gimmick. You are the one who is a little bit nonplussed by the whole thing that we'll be discussing. And if you're live tweeting into our group chat about your experience of watching 30-year-old television is any indication, you're less bullish on the future of entertainment even than I am, and I mean that in a very general sense. Because you watched a few episodes of The West Wing, asked me how this show survived. I told you how the show survived, and you went, streaming has ruined entertainment, and you flipped a table, you removed your pants, and you immediately just did a turn around your yard.
Yeah, I'm 5 episodes into The West Wing now, and I guess I just don't get reminded how often. I comment on other people living in a bubble, and I go, "Oh, you live in a bubble. You have no outside stimuli. Your view is skewed as such, and I am better than you because I take in stimuli from all of these other places and talk to all of these people, and I am a man about the universe." And then I forget that I'm just as bad because I live in a television bubble. I watch what we talk about on here and nothing else. So I often forget just what the state of television really looks like.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of.
Young Sheldon got like 10 seasons.
What's got 10 seasons?
Young Sheldon,
there is no justice in the world.
None.
The long tail of entertainment in television is an interesting thing to behold. All right, so tonight, Robert,
Yes,
what are we talking about?
Tonight we are talking about the most recent Nosferatu, though, Mark, subjecting you to the silent film and then making you review it for this would be a treat. But the most recent one.
Maybe for Halloween, Jonas and I will do a commentary track.
You would have a good time with that.
Probably. Nosferatu, as such, is a 2024 American supernatural horror film written and directed by the bravest director in Hollywood today.
Among them,
Robert Eggers. It is a remake of the F.W. Murnau's 1922 silent film Nosferatu, itself inspired by Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula.
Hang on. Put inspired in air quotes.
With blatantly ripped off.
This is the Nosferatu, and I know there's some people who go back and forth on this a little bit, and it depends on how you feel about intellectual property rights.
Mm-hmm.
But Nosferatu is the very example of, okay, you can copy my homework, but change a few words, and you change maybe 3 words. Every character gets a different name. And the conclusion is different in no small part because the end of Dracula, the novel, is actually a wild bit of adventure. And they couldn't actually film it properly until Coppola took it on. And even that had, mixed results.
The film stars Bill Skarsgård, who's having an interesting year, as the titular character, and Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp as the married Hutter couple with Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, Ralph Ineson, Sam McBurney, and Willem Dafoe in supporting roles. Development on the film began in 2015 when Eggers planned to make it his second film, describing it as a passion project, but he eventually opted to delay its production. Skarsgård and Depp were cast as leads in September. Filming took place primarily in Barrandov Studios in Prague, Czech Republic, between February and May of 2023. It had its world's premiere in Berlin, Germany on December 2nd, 2024, and was theatrically released in the U.S. by Focus Features, which is the independent studio attached to Universal, which means this will be on Peacock, on December 25th, 2024, and internationally by Universal on January 1st, 2025. So
not the only cock we'll be talking about tonight. You see, Mark, if you're taking my job, I have to take yours. You see how awkward this
that makes
gets?
me way uncomfortable. God, now I know why you hate it when I do it.
Oh, Lord.
It's funny, actually. All right, so I don't want to delay the opening too much. I want to really, theoretically, if everyone who says they're going to be on this is actually going to be on this is going to be a longer than normal podcast. I don't want it to be.
Dorian says he's still watching us and working on it, but he's trying.
Okay. I just really quickly, Alexis, you were excited for this? Not excited for this? Just another horror thing? What was your
crazy excited for this
movie?
I was crazy excited for this. Robert Eggers has delivered on every project he's worked on. I genuinely cannot think of a bad movie he's made. We raved about The Northman.
I was going to say real quick for people who remember we have an audience, and sometimes they don't know what we know. So Robert Eggers has made a couple of movies here. Almost every one of them kind of, at least gets you on base, if not hits it out of the park. He did The Witch in 2015, The Lighthouse in 2019, The Northman, which we reviewed on here and broke the network, and now Nosferatu.
I think he is one of the most engaging directors working in Hollywood. His film style, you cannot look away from the screen. It just engrosses you into his project. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but that really is the way I feel when I watch his films. I do not want to look away. I want to just lose myself in what he makes. He's making films unlike any other director right now. I cannot think of a current director that we could compare him to. And I love his style. And when I heard that he was going to try it, Nosferatu, I was like, okay, intrigued, very intrigued, paying attention.
Robert Eggers is probably the closest analog I can come up with to what directors used to do with film in the 70s. Like he doesn't, his stuff doesn't feel marred by studio notes. It feels like he's using the medium to the best of his ability to do interesting things with the medium. He's definitely taking on some interesting projects between The Witch, The Northman, and this. I think, he's the kind of filmmaker who, I talk endlessly about bringing my kids to the movies. I wish I could have brought them to this. This was wildly inappropriate for kids, and I made sure of that before I took them.
At least you actually checked. Do you have any idea how many scary or R-rated movies I go into, and I can actually see a parent with their kids? I'm like, somebody didn't do their homework.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a better job this year of, there's certain things I'm okay with, and then there are certain things I'm not, and I gotta see if the not okay things are in there, because I don't want to have to do that look at my kids again. Like, I'm sorry. So
I mean, I'm assuming if it's R-rated just because of foul language, you have no problems taking your kids in to see something like that.
Yeah, no, when I took Lily to go see The Matrix was R-rated because of language and because of the violence. There's no nudity in it, and there was no sex. So my point being,
we got that in the sequel.
That
sort of.
I would have liked them to have seen this, because I want to show them what good film looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Not, here's a movie that I enjoyed, or here, or anything like that. I mean, what does a film look like when it's well made? What are the pillars? What are the bones? What do those things look like? What do filmmakers do to make a superior product? Because this is a really good example of that. So this was one of those where I put it on the list because I knew Robert would want to do it when I saw it, but I had no enthusiasm for it. I was like, I don't care. But I'm glad I went, because as a film person, I think it was. It's funny. I wish Dorian was actually now here, and so maybe somewhere out there, either him or Mick or Shay will hear me say this and smile, and I will have brought joy to them today.
Or at least comment. It's like, if they can get access to YouTube, at least comment underneath so we can.
All I can think about while I was watching this was this movie. This movie was great. This was important. I'm glad I saw it, and I hated it. It wasn't quite that. I didn't quite hate it, but I was definitely thinking about Shay when I was watching this thing, going, this is a movie that demands to be seen. I don't have to enjoy it. Robert, what were your expectations of the movie going in?
Decently high. I tend to enjoy Eggers' work. I really enjoyed The Witch. We didn't review it, if memory serves.
We did not.
And
that was 2015. We weren't anything like that back then.
Yeah. But that's one of my more appreciated horror movies of the last 10 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoyed The Lighthouse a little bit less. I know other people enjoyed it more, but didn't quite hit me the same way it did other people. Still enjoyed it, but if I'm power ranking them, that was a little bit below. And then you and I talked plenty about The Northman, so there's our review of that you can find if you want.
I'd say didn't just talk about it. We also ranted about how it was so unfair it didn't get a single Oscar nomination.
There's a few that it definitely should have. Yeah, we had a thing or two about that. So I was very much interested in what he was going to do here. I'm generally interested in what Eggers does, sort of regardless of specific. I mean, I'm sure he could do something that is just weird enough that I would just say, no, thank you, not interested. But barring something truly out there avant-garde, I'm gonna go for the ride with him.
All right, last thing I want to talk about. And I thought about it after the movie. Been thinking about it. I didn't do what I wanted to do, which sort of maybe do a deep dive into the research. I've had other stuff I had to attend to. But I was kicking around an idea, and I'm not married to structure tonight. As such, I'm not really married to structure anymore. Believe it or not. But I had an idea, and I thought I would discuss it with my friends who are smart and think about these things. I was thinking about how many Dracula movies there are. A zillion. And they're in every genre. Romance, science fiction, action, comedy, horror, obviously being the number one. So I said it last. Every possible interpretation. It feels like everybody in Hollywood has played Dracula. I'm pretty sure Robert played Dracula once, somewhere.
There's that great quote from Nicolas Cage about horror is roles to play bucket list. Number 1, Dracula.
So I was thinking about we've been kind of lightly touching on over the last year or two on this show. Does the stuff of 100 years ago that had what everyone thinks is sort of a lasting impact on the culture still do? What makes Dracula relevant to the culture such that it keeps being redone and redone and redone and redone? And does it still, I'm going to go to you first, Robert. Does it still have resonancy with modern Western culture in the year of our Lord 2025? And I have a second part to that, but let me let you answer the first part of the essay question.
Well, there's two sort of ways to answer the first part of your question there. Why is Dracula still being remade and remade and remade? Because of a paperwork error. You see, Dracula's public domain in the United States because the Stoker estate didn't refile their some of their claims to it in like the 1920s. So Dracula gets made a lot because you don't have to pay anyone for Dracula. He's just there. And the state of the entertainment complex being what it is, well, hey, if we don't have to shell out IP rights, we're just even happier. But the question is maybe a little bit more like, does Dracula still have a ton of relevance? Yes, with the asterisk that the actual like novel of Dracula has never really been properly adapted. Most of the adaptation attempts get about 2/3 of it right. Which 2/3 changes dramatically depending on who's writing and directing it. But Dracula as a vampire, vampires hold a huge degree of prominence still in the cultural zeitgeist and probably always will. What they have is one of the other things that they have is kind of the ability to shift around depending on what's necessary or what the artist wants to do with them. You can do a lot of different kinds of vampires, and it's actually one of the things I appreciate. Hang on, you make a face, but if you really want to get into specifics, I can.
No. I'm laughing because of how true that is. Because not only there have been 18 billion iterations of Dracula, there have been just as many, if not more, iterations of kinds of vampires.
Yeah. And one of the things that actually makes this movie work is that it very clearly tries to get away from what vampires have been for the last 10, 15 years.
Sure.
Because, and I'm not making a value judgment here, but getting this movie is an anti-Twilight.
It's anti-romance.
Yeah, but not just anti-romance. This is one of the more grotesque depictions of Dracula or any vampire that you'll find in the last little bit. So instead of being a subject of romance and sparkly and friend-shaped, here we have a vampire that is a genuine monster again. And
when I say romance, I mean traditional romance, but I also mean romanticized. The idea of immortality, the sort of sexual connotations of vampire behavior. It was I hate to bring this up because it's going to deter the conversation to a place I don't want to go. I want it to go, but that was what I was trying to tell Michael Medved when I addressed the Twilight thing. Was there's a sexual, romantic, sensual appeal to degrees of vampirism that women go for. And when
it's why Anne Rice novels have sold for so long.
Yeah, and so when they see it overly sanitized in Twilight and made safe for consumption, they leapt on it. And I think that goes to at least some of its modern appeal. I needed to throw that in there.
Oh, you're right. And again, just kind of to the point, because the vampire as a creature is so malleable, it's rife for cultural alterations depending on where the zeitgeist is. And we've had the very, very sterile Hallmark vampire, for want of a better expression, for a little bit now. So getting back in this one to a genuine, monstrous presentation is a nice bit of, counterculture movement.
Alexis, you want to kind of take a stab at this? And more of what I want to hear from you is, I want to hear your what is your what's attractive about vampires to you? When you see like a vampire tale or an adaptation of Dracula, what does that ping for you?
Well, I didn't know I was going to be asked to go over my kinks, so thanks for that.
Please.
You just made Mark so happy.
I'm much more involved in this review now.
See, Mark has had to turn that off when it's just the two of us for a little bit, and he desperately wants an outlet for it.
Oh, I know.
Out of here. Go ahead.
I mean, come on, man. You accused me of being a furry a few different times just because it amused you.
Trying to behave. I am trying to have a serious discussion here, sir.
Sorry, you have no idea just how big the attracted to monster kink really is.
Oh, I know more than Mark does.
In the immortal words of Blitz from Hell of a Boss, oh, you're one of those. Well, from what I've gathered, Dracula was the first case of vampires actually being sexy. Vampire lore before, I mean, there's always been the lore of some kind of a creature associated with vampirism, sucks your blood, can't go out in the daylight, but it's always been a horrifying demon, a monster, a pure evil creature. Dracula was the first time.
More resemble zombie than, a sentient creature.
Yeah.
Well, not even, a lot of them aren't even recognizably human. If you look like the Greek mythology and the Roman mythology iterations of vampires, they are more akin to like Medusas or gargoyles.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going, Alexis.
But yeah, Dracula was the first time, but in a way, that was also part of the danger. That was the don't be seduced by how gorgeous Bela Lugosi is. Do not be seduced by the charms of this man. And that was always Dracula's thing, was that he was the charmer. Bela Lugosi was very good looking. And that was the idea of the vampire, the first idea of the vampire, that they could seduce their prey like that. And Hollywood.
These are temptation fables.
Yeah. And and that's, I think, where Hollywood really leapt onto that. This idea of the what's that line? The spider slowly weaving its web for the fly, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what has made Dracula so infamous. It was really one of the first cases of popular literature capitalizing on that and taking a creature that we had for so long associated as being evil, repugnant, gross, disgusting, terrifying, and saying, but what if you couldn't resist being attracted to them? So it was a different way to look at it.
Yeah, there's just taking kind of both of what you said, sounds like there's and it's sort of blossoming in my brain right now, like a traditional Christian mythos thing going on here, because a lot of what Judeo-Christian tradition deals with is the resistance of temptation.
Exactly.
Live a godly life. And so let's create fables and tales of, beautiful, seductive, sexy monsters, and now let's write our heroes and heroines as having to deal with resisting that.
Yeah, the whole scene with Dracula's brides, those beautiful, buxom, sexy women who come in and seem to have no concept, just throwing themselves at you. And it's like, no, resist the sexy. Sexy is bad. Sexy leads to sin. It's like, don't resist these women or you go to hell.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's also resist these women or they kill you because they don't have nearly the same restraint that Dracula does. But that's another way that the vampire mythology has kind of changed over time. Dracula actually starts out looking more like Nosferatu than like Bela Lugosi in the novel. He starts as a very old, wizened man, and the more he imbibes, the more life essence he takes from other people, the younger and more virile he becomes.
That's where Coppola got it right.
Yeah. There's a lot about that he took a bit too literally from the book, but Coppola's take on Dracula is a thing we can have a whole other podcast on.
Hey, at least his take on Coppola is better than Megalopolis.
Moving on.
Yeah. But that shifts a lot with Anne Rice, actually, is when you get the frozen in time vampire.
Mm-hmm.
When you get the, I'm Brad Pitt in my 20s. I'm going to be 20 years. I'm going to look 20 years old forever. And that's what adds a little bit more of a different layer of the temptation to it, because Lugosi's Dracula is definitively bad for you. Like, once in a while he makes a bride, everyone else he kills.
As far as I'm concerned, Brad Pitt can go to hell. Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson now are the epitomes of sexiness with vampires. Go see the new Interview with the Vampire series. It's awesome.
Keep going,
if you
Robert,
feel
please.
so inclined. But the temptation changes when it becomes, well, what if we can make any vampire could make you immortal, and however you are now, you can be that way forever. What do you have to give up? Your humanity,
your soul.
If the central essay question here in our little English lit group is what is the enduring appeal of vampirism in Dracula? My God, you really just kind of hit it on the head. More so than temptation itself, deeper than that is the enduring quest for immortality in Western culture. Man, are we obsessed with wanting to live forever, to the point where there's entire sections of science dedicated to it.
And the interesting thing about, again, different vampire myths and Dracula in different iterations, it's very, you can have it, but again, you're going to lose your soul, and you're going to lose. Here's what it's going to cost you. You get a half-life, and every bit of your continued existence comes at the express expense of other people. Are you that selfish? And the answer to a lot of people apparently is yes, because this is.
Let's face it, there are so many people out there, and yes, a good chunk of them here in Western civilization, who would gladly nuke half the planet if it meant they got to live forever.
Yeah, that's where we are.
To the overall psychology, group psychology of Western civilization.
Well, that whole thing kind of reaches its nadir with the Twilight Saga, and I'm not even being facetious here.
Mm-hmm.
That is, Stephanie Meyer created the most appealing vampires you can, made a group of them moral as you can. Again, they don't kill people certainly whenever possible, and
made a female archetype who didn't have to do damn squat to get what she wanted.
That's very true, and that's again, as Mark would say, that's capitalizing on a very strong existing desire out of people, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. It made them ridiculously overpowered. I mean, there was that joke that image that would float around for a while. How Twilight should have ended, and it's Bella and Edward, and then behind them you see Blade. And somebody pointed out, dude, Blade would have no chance in a fight against her iteration of vampires.
It's a weird take on the female power fantasy Twilight is.
Yeah. But yeah, every vampire has a freaking superpower. Like, they're not just vampires. They're not just gorgeous.
They're also
not
X-Men.
just criminal. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's one in the fourth book, fifth movie who literally can control all of the elements like he's the freaking Avatar.
So I walked out of, I'm going to end it here so that we can move on, keeping time. But I walked out of Nosferatu, and I just had this thought of, why do we keep doing this? Well, we spent about 20-ish minutes discussing why we keep doing this, and we'll continue to do it because, I mean, when I tell you this culture's obsession with living forever, and it's still not being able to reconcile what you have to give up, what immortality does to your soul and your psyche. I mean, to a silly degree, this got discussed in Upload, And Alexis and I have had several conversations reviewing that show, discussing, okay, great, now you can live forever. Now what? You know, what are the implications of not having a purpose-driven life, not having something to live for, not
being able to be with the ones you love, watching your loved ones age without you, never changing, never. I mean,
like, why do we keep doing this? Because we're still wrestling with it. That's why. So, Robert, now that I've led this wonderful philosophical discussion to kick off 2025, tell us what happens in this movie.
So, Nosferatu begins with a dream sequence featuring Lily Rose Depp. As she is somewhat accosted in her dreams by the titular Nosferatu, Count Orlok. We flash forward, and she has married Nicholas Hoult, which is just a giant mistake. But here we are.
Stop it. Leave that man alone.
You can bitch about him all you want.
We're better this year. We're being better.
It's like you can bitch about him all you want when we review Superman, okay?
Ugh.
Look, Ryan Eggers confirmed that he used real rats and real wolves in the shooting of this.
Because he's awesome.
And I'm convinced he was just trying to kill Nicholas Hoult, and it's a shame he didn't.
I buy that theory. Keep going.
Wouldn't it be more practical to try to kill Aaron Taylor Johnson?
I'm going to kill you if you don't shut up. Keep going.
And he is working as something of the modern equivalent of kind of a real estate agent.
He's a real estate agent, and I don't know why you're dancing around it.
Well, because that's not what he is that's what we would recognize the role as. That's not what the role actually was if you go into the history of what he's doing, but I'll leave that aside.
He's basically just there to make sure legal documents get signed. In the basis of things, he's kind of like a notary.
Yeah, there's a few different functions that someone in his role serves. And anyway, he gets told, well, you have to take a quick jaunt. It's only a 6-week journey to Transylvania, to Count Orlok. And his initials are JH. Again, this is unsubtle plagiarism from Dracula. And his wife says, but don't go. I don't want you to go.
I had a dream, and in the dream, I married death.
At which point,
every modern woman I have ever met. Like, I gave you this wonderful house and the life, but I have to go to work now to pay for it. No, stay in bed with me all day.
At which point, Nicholas Hoult goes, you can tell my friend about your dream. I'm leaving. His friend, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and his wife and 2 young kids are willing to put up, again, Lily Rose Depp, while he's gone. And as he leaves, it turns out the Scrooge character, because this is what Scrooge did in A Christmas Carol. He's a property manager, basically.
Money lender.
Is more than a little crazy, and under the influence of Orlok. This is our Renfield analog. And so Nicholas Hoult goes to Transylvania. He finds a bunch of gypsies, has a weird experience with the gypsies, loses his horse, walks up the hill, encounters a driverless carriage, goes into the old castle to meet the Count, gets him to, there are documents signed, which, oh boy, Nicholas Holt's character, what a dummy. I know a demonic contract when I see one, sir, and so should you.
He's an archetype, okay? He is. It's like making fun of stereotypes in a Stephen King novel. Yes, you're making fun of how stupid he is, but he was one of the original stupid people who didn't see the writing on the wall. There are college courses that could be taught about how stupid Jonathan Harker was in Dracula, and he is the same character. So,
all right, enough. Yep. No more interruptions. Robert, second gear.
So they are documents signed, but Nicholas Hoult can't actually leave this castle and is being fed on, and he kind of figures out that Orlok's a vampire. He finds him in his coffin, and then the naked Orlok stands up, and if you saw this in IMAX, you got an eyeful.
Oh, for God's sake.
Hang on. I'm actually joking. I have no problem with that scene, but for some reason, people...
I'm not supposed to get penis in that eye.
It's like, sorry, we didn't know it was such a problem that Orlok liked to sleep in the nude, okay? How many of us like to sleep in the nude?
Keep going, Robert.
I don't, actually. Thanks for asking. I appreciate you asking about my personal life and habits, Mark. It makes me feel good. So Orlok leaves by ship because this, one of my gripes, again, this is bad plagiarism because in Dracula, going by ship to England is a necessity. Going from Transylvania to a small German village by ship is plot contrivance in the extreme. Again, bad plagiarism. Bad. Nicholas Hoult escapes the castle, is chased by wolves, so we can actually insert the Abraham Simpson, it's late, there were wolves after me gag. He is found by a few Eastern Orthodox nuns at an abbot. Abbot is the person in charge. It's an abbey. There we go. We got there. And he has to recover from the dark influence of the Count, while the Count goes on the last voyage of the Demeter, which we reviewed last year. Tune in, go give that a look if you're so inclined. We all do wind up in the German town, but everyone on the ship is dead except for Orlok, and a bunch of rats run off of it. So now, plague! A plague has come to this place, and yes, there is in fact a plague that starts running rampant. Nicholas Hoult shows back up. Things start going a little bit sideways now as Orlok is in dreams via evil influence and magic, starting to harass Lily Rose Depp, and she rejects him because she is a pure, upstanding woman. So he says, fine, I'm going to kill everyone you love instead, because he's a monster. So over the next couple of nights, Orlok kills the two children, because Robert Eggers is a brave director and has no compulsion about this stuff.
100%.
Kills Aaron Taylor Johnson's wife. While this is going on, we are introduced to a man who keeps the local asylum and is the doctor, and he tries to run a more modern asylum. He doesn't like some of the barbarity of the old ways. But he is left a little bit confused at some of the afflictions that Lily Rose Depp is dealing with, and she's been wandering and sleepwalking and rambling and everything. And at a loss for what to do, he and Nicholas Hoult and Aaron Taylor Johnson go find the true standout of this movie, Willem Dafoe and his coat.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely
and
enough,
Willem Dafoe playing.
Strangely enough, taking place in a German town, yet Willem Dafoe is the only one who manages to muster a German accent.
Moderately, and I'll talk about that again in a minute because I actually don't hate the choice, but again, I'll get to it. So, in this instance, he is playing not Van Helsing, for legally distinct for international copyright laws, legally distinct from Van Helsing. We have the Swiss instead of Dutch, Abraham von Franz. I forget exactly what it is, but it's Willem Dafoe. And he is a little bit of not just a scientist, but a little bit of an esotericist. So he believes in the weirdness. And he's able to recognize what's going on here is the influence of Nosferatu, the undead monstrosity. And they try to figure out a way to fight it. And ultimately, the conclusion he comes to is, well, we got to find the box where he sleeps because it's full of earth from his homeland, and he has to be able to rest in it. So if we can destroy that, we'll kind of screw with him. But he has also discovered that really the only real way to deal with this guy is to force him into sunlight. And he's pretty careful. So he and Lily Rose Depp together kind of... they independently come to the conclusion and then share it with each other that she has to wind up being a sacrifice to keep him in a position where he can't hide and he is exposed to sunlight, and this will probably cost her life. So all the menfolk go to the ancient decrepit manor where he's holed up. They kill the old Scrooge stand-in in a funny sequence. Burn the house to the ground. Nicholas Hoult's Aaron Taylor Johnson has succumbed to the plague by this point in grief from his family just being annihilated. And so the two doctors dispose of the bodies and deal with the house while Nicholas Hoult rushes back towards his wife's side, but alas, it is too late. She has understood the assignment and forces poor Count Orlok to consume her blood, but she has more blood than the average person, which is We'll talk about this is a thing Eggers does that I actually appreciate, and we'll talk about later. And it takes him longer to drain her than it would most people, and he's unable to escape kind of the mutual thrall they've created, so he is stuck. And the sunlight hits him, and it melts him basically away. And we end on the tragic note that the city has been saved, the plague has been stopped, Nosferatu is vanquished. But boy, the price to get there was not trivial.
All right. Alexis, what'd you think of the movie?
Like I said, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a brilliant adaptation. Really enjoyed everyone involved. I have not seen Lily Rose Depp in like anything of substantial notice before this.
So Mark and I reviewed The Idol. I'm still bitter at Mark for making me watch that horrible piece of crap.
Oh, I remember hearing you guys talk about it.
And she's the lead.
Yeah,
so I'm still a little bitter at her.
That movie was so bad. You guys talked about it on like 3 other shows that I was involved in that had nothing to do with that movie. It kept bleeding out.
Hang on, not a movie. Would have been less painful. It's a TV show. There's
whatever the hell it was.
All right, yeah. Here we are to talk about Loki season 2. Have you watched The Idol yet, though?
Yeah, pretty much. Oh my god. Bill Skarsgård is unbelievable in this role. I mean, we talk about an actor disappearing into a role. There is at no point in this film at all I ever recognize him. Yeah. Between the makeup, the lighting, the prosthetics, the
things he does with his voice.
Yeah, it's like guttural vocal. What's it called? Like the guttural vocal singing.
Yeah, I know. Like throat singing.
Yeah. That is the thing, and that's almost what he sounds like when he talks. I'm listening to talk. I'm like, how are you not destroying your vocal cords one strand at a time doing this voice? It is incredible. It is haunting, and it just blew me away. You know how incredible he was in the role. I would also just like to add, saw this with my husband, who I've mentioned before on the show, is from Romania. The Romanian in this movie is on point. Eggers actually got Romanian actors to play the gypsies. Their accent is flawless. It's not, it's like, he's got, obviously Andre's got a really good ear for picking up accents on that kind of a thing. We joked when we saw Captain America Civil War, and you hear Bucky speaking Romanian when he's in Bucharest. And I said, how accurate was it? He said, oh, it's accurate, but the accent, you can clearly tell he has not spoken Romanian in ages. Right. You could hear that accent. He said the Romanian in this was flawless. It was so good. So, again, we've talked before about how much Eggers does research with his movies. We talked about that with The Northman, and obviously it shows here because that was really accurate. Funny enough, the castle they used for the exterior shots, I've been there. That's Corrin Castle. That's one of the castles we toured when we met with Andre's family back in Romania.
That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's got this crazy long stone bridge that you have to walk across to get into it. It's so beautiful. So it was kind of fun seeing. I was like, I didn't recognize it quite at first, but then I looked up what it was, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I recognize that now. But yeah, I just loved everything about this film. I put it as number 2 on my best movies of 2024, and I still stand by it.
Cool. I think the nicest thing I can say about this movie is how much more it made me appreciate certain actors, how much better it makes them look. Like, what a redeem job this does for both Lily Rose Depp and Aaron Taylor Johnson. And they are both stellar in this movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson is like watching him in Kraven the Hunter and watching him in this, it's like 2 different dudes. And it is amazing how a director in a project can both celebrate and make an actor look amazing or wreck them. Yeah. It's in the same year. Lily Rose Depp, let me tell you, she's my favorite part of this movie. I didn't realize it was her. I went into this really cold. Like I really didn't do any research on it. I just kind of I knew I was doing it. I was never not going to do it. And so it was like, okay, it's just another thing on the list of shit I got to do. So I just kind of marched in there, tucked my chin, and I'm like, let's do this thing. So I didn't know who was in it. I really didn't know anything about the story. I didn't realize that this was a plagiarized version of Dracula. Really, I didn't know shit.
Well, another bit of the history there, like the Stoker estate sued the makers of this movie over that. Judge found in their favor, and you can debate whether or not this actually does get above plagiarism or not. I mean, again, it's somewhat debatable, but the judge found against the movie and ordered all copies of it destroyed. But the film had kind of made its way to America by that point, and because Dracula, even then, again, public domain, because even back then, they'd let their copyright lapse. So, yeah, it's basically a cheap knockoff of Dracula. And guess what we do here in the United States with Dracula? We'd make a buttload of cheap knockoffs.
Yeah, so I had no foreknowledge of who was in this or what they were doing or anything else like that. And I didn't recognize Lily Rose Depp. She looks almost like a different person in this movie from what she looked like in The Idol or Wolf, for that matter, which I also saw her in. And it made me appreciate her so much more as a performer because she sucks in The Idol, and Wolf, she was kind of a silly goose.
Everything sucks in The Idol.
It's so bad.
I was going to say, in all fair, looking back at it, do you think that her sucking in The Idol was her fault?
Clearly not, because she's a stellar actress. For me, she's one of the best parts of this. Yes. Again,
you just talked about, a good director. Best example I could ever give. Mark Wahlberg in The Happening. Mark Wahlberg is a phenomenal actor. But then you watch The Happening, and it's like literally, it's like, how did M. Night Shyamalan just suck all the talent out of that man?
Bill Skarsgård is great in this. I didn't recognize him, and again, I should have thrown him on the list there.
Another partial redemption from being part of one of the worst things you saw all year.
So you have just one stellar performance after another in this. So if you're looking for a movie, show me an example of the best acting you've seen in a movie all year without it being all dramatic or having to sit through 4 hours of The Brutalist. More on that later this year. This is a really good example. Lily Rose Depp is so good in this. She really commits to the hystericalness of that character. She elicits both sympathy and aggravation at the same time. It's pretty impressive. The Aaron Taylor Johnson, like I said, I loved his performance in this, and I really empathized with him. Like, I let you into my house and you destroyed everything. Fantastic. I feel you, brother. Nicholas Hoult is Nicholas Hoult. He's not bad. He's just, I've seen this performance before. It's like, let's put some rock and music and give him Aquafina, and this is the same performance as in Renfield.
He is very clearly channeling Keanu Reeves and Francis Ford Coppola's take on Dracula, which is Keanu Reeves at the height of being a fence post.
Yeah. See, I don't see that. I also just saw Juror Number 2, which I thought he was phenomenal in. So I'm sorry.
Phenomenal is a stretch, but he's okay.
Well, I'm sorry. You keep talking about how much you don't think he's that good of an actor. I legit do not see your complaints.
I didn't say that. I said, for me, he gives a solid performance, but it's a performance I've seen before, whereas everybody else was so much better than anything I've seen them do before.
I mean, look, here's where we landed on Nicholas Hoult by and large after the last 2 years. He's actually a better comedic actor than he is a dramatic actor, and he's still doing dramatic roles, so I still got to shrug.
The makeup in this is pretty phenomenal. Like the job they did on Count Orlok was fantastic. This is another really good example of using practical things versus CGI. Talked about the real rats and stuff like that. Everything has a very earthy feel in this movie, which is nice because I think I'm just getting a little too used to everything seeming like an animated movie. And then you have this, and this feels very real. This is a very lived-in world. As far as, the story, I'm almost afraid to say this out loud, but I was not interested in the story. This is a movie that for me is carried by performance and aesthetic because all of those things are outstanding. If you deconstruct this, there's a monster, it comes to town, and it's doing stuff, and they have to defeat the monster. I'm fine with it. It's interesting to everybody else. I have to dig for into like the themes and other things going on in this movie to find interesting stuff. The story isn't interesting to me. That's a very subjective thing. That's a very Mark thing, and I almost hesitated to bring it up. Like there were points of this movie I was getting a little antsy. Like, come on, let's move this along. So clearly, I'm not totally the audience for it. Outside of that, I enjoyed the costumes. I think that the costumes were really well done. I wanted to say this about like why I keep calling him brave, and you kind of mentioned it before. You don't kill kids in a movie ever.
Well, I mean,
it's a great way to not get your movie made. And if you do kill him, you kill him off screen. This guy, this brave motherfucker, frames your monster with 2 kids in his hands, takes a bite out of them like they're apples, and chucks them to the side.
Yep.
And I was like, oh!
In all fairness, they were silhouetted, so.
Look, fine. You still don't see that in any kind of modern movie. Those were 2 pretty adorable white girls, and he bit into them like fruit and threw them down like garbage, and it's all on screen. There was no cutaway. There was nothing. That was fucking brutal, and it's the kind of thing that'll not get your movie made. And there it is. There's Universal with big balls and focus features going, yeah, buddy. What else you want to do that's gonna upset people? And credit where credit's due. Like I said,
sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
There's a lot of interesting camera work in the movie. I didn't talk about Willem Dafoe. I've been mad at myself if I'd forgotten this. Willem Dafoe is also my second favorite performance in this entire movie, and a lot of like the stuff that's kind of dry and drags for me, he made better because I could just kind of key into his performance. He's so good in this, and I loved his actual character is my favorite character in the movie. Like, never mind performance and all of that or actors. Like, which character was I like with them the whole time? It's him.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of the Doctor in Hot Frosty. He was like, well, look, there's no other evidence here except that it's a snowman. There's no other evidence here. It's a monster. Just deal with it, people. Let's go. Like, kind of remind me of Hamish Linklater, I think his name is, from Midnight Mass. Like, Linklater, I have no patience for any of you. Like, you're wasting precious time not embracing the madness. Let's go. All of that. Willem Dafoe really elevated this thing for me, and he was a joy to watch. So I'll see the rest of this to Robert. Robert, what do you think? Obviously, it was like, what, your number 1 movie of the year, number 2?
No.
Somewhere there.
It was again, because I only broke mine down into from my top 10, I had the top 5 that I was really solid with, like, these are the 5 best. Best being like, by our criteria, which is not always like the best. And the 5 that were there to kind of fill out the 10 slots. Mm-hmm. This was in the top of that this was in the top category rather than the bottom one. But no, I don't think this would have been my number 1 of the year necessarily if I ordered them that way. Because like you, like, there's parts of this movie where things drag a little bit too much. That's a very real thing that happens here. But there's a lot that's really good. Eggers is a really strong visual director. Like, he has a real flair for iconography. And he's also got a wonderful ability to generate atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Watching The Witch, like, you feel oppressive and isolated in that movie. Watching Lighthouse, you feel the walls closing in on you and the drudgery and the repetitiveness and the madness. Northmen, we talked about it. Like, you kind of feel that atmosphere. You feel the way where we're going. You feel the difference between when you're in Russia collecting slaves and when you're making the final push through the fighting on the volcanoes of Iceland. Like, that is a very geography that he plays with, and every part of it feels real. It all feels different. So he generates tremendous atmosphere with his projects, and he does so again here. There's a real sense of the creeping dread, the inevitable decay. Like, oh boy, death, the slow death has arrived via this plague ship, and what do we do about this now?
Right.
You see people burning bodies in the street. You see things starting to break down. You see the effects of plague. And that's all to its credit. The other thing that Eggers does, and this makes him a bit of a unicorn as a creator in modern Hollywood. He takes the people in his period pieces and their beliefs seriously. So talk about The Witch for just a second. The notion of people being unsettled by witchcraft is something that most modern creators laugh at. So if you tell a story about witchcraft being a big deal, there's an underlying assumption in the writing and the presentation that these people are idiots, you should laugh at them or pity them. It is rife in those kinds of stories, and it is utterly absent in Eggers' work.
The Arthur Miller effect.
Yeah. And which itself is a wild misreading of a lot of what Miller did with the Crucible, because the witchcraft was never meant to be something you don't take seriously. It's how you respond to it, but that's a whole other thing. Being anti-witch hunt is not the same as being like, hey, we should be careful about some of this stuff. And so he takes the fact that, witchcraft was a serious deal to these people, so they take it seriously as actors and characters, and he takes it seriously as a director. It's not tongue-in-cheek. It's not pejorative. It's not dismissive. It's not looking down on anything. So here, when it's, okay, plague has come to our city. What might have brought this? Well, maybe it was the vampire. Again, there's a degree to which, that's kind of silly. But, we also know there's a vampire. So it kind of tracks. And he takes the vampire mythology seriously, and everyone in the world treats what's going on seriously. You have the doctor who is almost pure science. Like, okay, we've got a plague. Like, that's real. I'm not disputing that. But you're saying it's being spawned by a supernatural entity living in the dilapidated manor at the end of the canal. And I've got a little bit of a problem with that. I'm not saying you're crazy. This is actually one of the things I really deeply appreciate about that character. He never says that, Willem Dafoe is crazy.
Right.
In fact, he approaches him specifically because we've reached the end of what I know.
Yeah, it's like, what is it? It's like, I have exhausted all theorems and I have tried every hypothesis. It's like your answer may be crazy, but it's literally the only other answer we have left.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I mean, I know I was tongue in cheek about it, but that's literally the point I brought up with like Hot Frosty and something else I said recently. It's the same thing. We've exhausted every other possibility. All that's left is magic.
And I, much like you, I love Willem Dafoe's character. He has so many great lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a character who reached the end of science, found it wanting, and kind of then went into the mystic.
Another element of things we still struggle to reconcile in Western culture is, how to marry faith and science, and warring camps saying you can't have both, and another camp saying you have to have both. Like, you
kind of do, believe it or not.
Huh?
You kind of do, believe it or not. Like,
no, that's my point.
Yeah, any scientist who tells you that there's not the inexplicable out there is someone you can't take seriously, because an honest scientist will tell you, there's stuff we don't know and understand.
That's one of the things that makes the movie interesting to me. Why I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is that it does bring up a lot of different philosophical strands that we're dealing with today to one degree or another in our culture, in our national conversation.
And when Willem Dafoe says, guys, you're stupid. You've not been so much enlightened by science as blinded by it.
Right.
I mean, it's a great line because it's true.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh,
So
I'll say, here's the quote I was looking for. Arthur Conan Doyle. When you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. That was the quote I was trying to remember.
Please give me that, please, because I keep butchering it every time I bring it up, and I've brought it up like 20 times.
The quote?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. When you have
Robert, keep going.
Okay. When you have eliminated all which is impossible.
In text it to me.
Sorry.
So he can read it later. It's okay. And that's kind of what we arrive at here. I deeply appreciate the vampire being just a monster again.
Yeah.
We spent the first 30 minutes kind of going over this, but for the last 10 to 15 years, the vampire has been very much not that. Not that there aren't monstrous elements to it, but
what a great final shot, by the way.
Oh, I love that. I wish I could. That has to be based on some classical painting that I just can't remember.
The waxen body on top of the girl with.
Yeah.
What was that? Was that baby's breath? What was that flower?
I forget the flower. I don't know what the flower was.
You know me, I'm not a huge fan of grotesque, and I certainly don't want to, gross stuff hanging up in my house. But that is a picture I would happily portray. I would happily display.
It is haunting. It really is.
It's a wonderful final shot, and that's the other thing I deeply appreciate about this version of, again, the vampire. It's powerful and it's monstrous, but it's also hideous and grotesque and partially rotted. And whatever the attraction is between Lily Rose Depp and Count Orlok, it's almost the kind of attraction that you hate, right? She is compelled by forces beyond her to sort of be drawn to him like a magnet, but it's not when I say it's not sexual attraction, there's a sexual component to this, clearly, but she is not hot and bothered for this guy. How could you? He's a corpse.
It's not physical attraction.
Yeah.
There's something ethereal.
It kind of reminded me of Phantom of the Opera that she reached out psychically because, she mentioned she's always kind of been in tune with that. She reached out looking for someone. Orlok answered. She didn't realize, it's like they joke about in the Ouija board movie. It's like, be careful who you reach out to on those things.
How many times have you heard, what do you see in him? I don't know. I'm connected. We connect. Okay, but he's got a third nipple on his forehead. I look past that. We are connected on a level. I can't explain it, but when our hearts are together, we're as one, and that's all I need for love.
Well,
I'm playing around and being flip about it, but how many times have you actually heard people say that? And God only knows how many times it's shown up in our culture.
Well, see, that's the thing is that she admits she's not attracted to him on that basis. She reached out looking for someone, and it ended with her going through years of what she called melancholy. We know that she suffered from seizures, sleepwalking, night terrors, horrible things like that. And she realizes that all began when she reached out to Orlok. It's not so much that she wants to be tethered to him. It's that she realized she is tethered to him, and this has essentially become her fate. And she's terrified by that, but she doesn't know how to get out of it. What can she do? Go back in time and tell her younger self, for the love of God, just go adopt a puppy and be happy with that.
But to that point again, I raised about Eggers taking some of this stuff seriously. There's a bit where it used to be medical assumption that certain conditions were brought on by an excess of blood, hence the practice of bleeding somebody. They actually bring that up as part of her problem. She's, sleepwalking is caused by an excess of blood. There's too much blood circulating. Body's got to do something. Again, this is nonsense from a legitimate medical perspective, but he actually takes that sort of idea that, okay, but what if? And part of the reason she's able to maintain Orlok's presence in her room as long as she is because she does have an excess of blood. So you kind of wind up shrugging a little bit like, I appreciate the fact that when I say he takes these things seriously, I don't mean that he necessarily takes them as true. But you can take something as serious and people can treat it as though it's true, even if you know it's not. And it's all in how the characters and how the story treats it. And Eggers never diminishes, demeans, or belittles the people in his stories, even though they're working with really weird information, most of which is not accurate. But again, you can treat that as look at the rubes, or you can treat that as this is the world we're inhabiting. And he chooses the latter, and everything he does is better for it. Yeah, and on to the presentation of Orlok. I appreciate the fact that the first time we see him in like real light, he looks as gross as we think he does. Like there's nothing. Again, this is just very clearly just visual storytelling, but when he's bereft of the shadows and the magic, he's not anywhere near as scary as he looks under those circumstances when he's forced to like exist in daylight, in truth and light. He's nothing but a withered corpse, and he dissolves as such. So
credit to the marketing department also for keeping Orlok's look completely under wraps. I was shocked that we didn't get any kind of news. It's like leak. Here's Bill Skarsgård in his makeup or some kind of like, to the point that when we saw it, I actually heard someone, when you actually do see him, I actually heard someone in the theater said, he has a mustache?
Which is, again, a Stokerism when his original description of Dracula is very much like Orlok. It's an old wizened man with a big bushy mustache who gets younger and more virile and more refined as the movie goes on. Yeah, as the novel goes on again, the original Dracula. So I think the last thing maybe worth mentioning, again, the score is really good. Evoking that time period correctly, and as well as like the kind of movie that this is remaking, without necessarily being so dated that it becomes grating. The acting here is all very good to great. This was one of my better movies that I saw in 2024 for a reason, and I'm very glad that we get more movies from Eggers because he's announced some new projects. So big thumbs up to that.
All right, if we got nothing else, then let's move on to the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
Alrighty. So let's go to box office here. I want to do a couple of different things. As of January, first of all, on a budget of $50 million, this has already made $100.4 million. So yay for profitability. As of January 5th, 2025, Nosferatu grossed $69.4 million in the U.S. and Canada, and $31 million in other territories for a worldwide gross of $100.4 million. In the U.S. and Canada, Nosferatu was released alongside A Complete Unknown, Baby Girl, which I saw this weekend as well, and The Fire Inside, which I have no intention of seeing. And it was originally projected to gross around $25 million from a little less than 3,000 theaters in its 5-day opening weekend, after making $11.55 million on the first day and $7.6 million on its second. Estimates were raised to $42 million. It went on to debut $21.7 million in its opening weekend, finishing in third behind Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Mufasa the Lion King. I mean, no one's shocked there. I'll be curious to see how this does at the Oscars, if at all. It's been nominated or won a bunch of awards. I'm not going to read all of these, but it won Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography for the National Board of Review. Best Cinematography, the San Diego Film Critics Society. Best Art Direction, Chicago Film Critics Association. It won Best Cinematography, Great Western New York Film Critics Association. Scott, pending Nominations for Critics' Choice Awards in cinematography, production design, costume design, makeup, and hairstyling. Nominated for a bunch of satellite awards, but it won Best Ensemble Motion Picture. And it's got a nomination for the Golden Reel Awards for Outstanding Achievement in Sound Editing. So, Alexis, you're kind of my Oscar girl. You gotta read on this.
Unfortunately, I don't think that it's going to rake in a lot because we know that the Oscars are horribly biased against scary movies.
True.
And look, I want this. I want Robert Eggers to get a Best Director nomination in the worst way for this. Again, I'm with you guys. The fact that he didn't get a nomination for The Northman is criminal. And I'm sorry, but I don't think it's going to get any decent nominations. Maybe cinematography, but it's going to lose to Wicked.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to win anything. I
hate the Wicked. I loathe that Wicked is probably going to. You saw that the Golden Globes, they gave it their pity award for box office achievement.
I hate that award.
It is an impossibly stupid award, and they gave it to a movie that underperformed. Like, it didn't even have the big box office take everyone expected to. This was their pity award because we really want to give something to this.
It's a pity. That award is a joke anyway for box office success. Like, that's not what the Golden Globes are. That's basically them.
They might as well have given them a sack of oranges. Talking about the movie at hand here, I think it's going to get a bunch of nominations for a lot of the art stuff. I don't think it gets a nomination for Best Picture. That would be insanity. Wouldn't it be funny though if it did? Wouldn't it be funny if it won?
You know what? Gun to my head. Of everything I've seen thus far, it would get my vote at the moment, given the Oscar criteria. We know it's going to something like Brutalist or Amelia Perez or some bogus shit like that.
I'm guessing the Best Picture this year is going to end up being either The Brutalist or Anora, based on history and.
Well, Anora didn't win at the Golden Globes. Again, Amelia Perez did. So shrug.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, I saw the thing you put on. You quoted from Twitter. That's hilarious. Hence my remark of yeesh. All right.
Yeah. Let's just make brutal cartel leaders into sympathetic figures.
I have a feeling when we do our Oscar show and we have to get to Amelia Perez, that's when Robert finally brings out the noose.
Oh, Mark and I are reviewing that as part of a triple feature, and yeah,
noose,
something.
All right.
I have a big length of chain downstairs. I might do something with that.
The number one movie of the weekend of January 3rd through the 5th, was Mufasa: The Lion King, which traded spots with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Mufasa continuing to be a giant bomb, and it sucks.
Mufasa only in its third week dropped another 36.3%, but it rose to the number one. And Sonic dropped another 42.3% in its third week, and it went from 1 to 2.
For the record, though, the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has now entered the $1 billion generated category with in movie terms, at least.
Yeah.
With all three of them.
In its second week, and finally we are done playing catch up now. We can start. We can move on to new movies. Nosferatu in its second week maintained its spot at number 3. Moana 2 went up a spot in its 6 weeks out from 5 to 4. Wicked fell from 4 to 5. A Complete Unknown maintained its spot at 6 in its second week. Baby Girl, I'm not going to do a big, long thing like I did with A Complete Unknown or whatever else I saw the past week. But I did go see Baby Girl.
Did you feel bad for Nicole Kidman?
This past Saturday. Here's my kind of 10-word review. It's better than Eyes Wide Shut.
You need to revisit that movie. That's one that's due a reappreciation.
I just saw it for the first time in October.
Okay, that's part of why. Okay, that look, you either saw that way too long ago or way too recently, and there's only one of the two options there.
Baby Girl was all right. It's not. I think my problem, and this might just be a me thing, But the girl I took to go see it, we kind of both arrived in the same place of, boy, Hollywood really wants you to think like it's giving you some salacious stuff. Like, hey, you prurient, yeah, you boring vanilla fucks out there. Here's some hotness for you. Here's some naughtiness for you to be all titillated by. And you'll watch it and you go, my God, are we this far off? I travel in some pretty weirdo communities as
okay, Mark. Let me tell you, I don't travel in your weirdo communities. I'm a little bit off. Hang on, I'm a little bit off. I don't pretend not to be.
Okay.
But no, it is a damning indictment on. Damning's maybe the wrong word. But the fact that something like Baby Girl or Challengers is considered salacious, scandalous.
Yeah, you started talking. I was just like, we got to talk about Challengers again now.
Challengers is considered salacious because of the one scene in the trailer that actually amounted to nothing.
Yeah, no, I've screamed about that all year. But that's my point. Like, we keep getting these movies where Hollywood's like, huh, you vanilla people, here's some hotness for you, and you're like, oh please, this is barely a thing. Like, I remember the Sex, Lies, and Videotape movie from when I was a kid because I wasn't parented. I remember Blame It on Rio.
You watched Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct.
That's right, back to back, butt to butt. I watch some of this stuff and I go, like, I don't know what we're doing here. Why is this Baby Girl's all right, but it kind of plays with like CNC and BDSM relationships and master dominant submissive stuff. And it's like, yeah, if you're not really like, it's, I guess when you've read the story of Owen and seen the movie, you're not impressed. But I guess most. I was gonna
say for the people who are too skittish to actually watch the story of O, we've got.
Yeah, like, look, if the story of O's way too much for you, here's Baby Girl. All right, and I guess that's where I'm coming from. Like, you gotta go past Caligula and the story of O to get me interested. And I guess most of the world's not there. And I just kind of look back and go, get fucking lives already. Jesus Christ. Live a little.
God. What's happened in Hollywood, and this is like documented if you want to look at the data.
Mm-hmm.
There's exponentially less sex stuff in movies. And bear in mind, what constitutes sexual content for the purposes of determining your rating is a big category.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of sexual content has dropped dramatically. Meanwhile, what is presented has become exponentially more explicit.
What's funny to me is something like Secretary, which I remember showing that to Melissa and her going, "This is the most boring movie ever." It was 20 years ago Secretary came out.
Give or take, because Maggie Gyllenhaal and James Spader hadn't completely jumped the shark yet.
Yeah, but like I remember like that one was like a big deal at the time. Like, oh, she's got a saddle on, and a carrot in her mouth. My goodness.
Yeah, and then we get 50 Shades of Grey with all of us rolling our eyes.
Yeah, I guess like I said, I'm the wrong person to judge because I'm so far to one side that like.
As somebody decently far on the other side from you on that respect, Mark, no, you're not wrong.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad you validate me. Love you, brother. All right, moving on. Anyway, Baby Girl's all right. It's not worth going. Wait, when it comes on Max, watch it at home with your pants off. You'll be fine. Nicole Kidman's hot. What can I tell you? And so is Antonio Banderas. Two hot people doing hot stuff.
She may be hot, but I go to an AMC theater and I'm sick to death of that preview with her.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's what 5 years running now.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Baby Girl.
I was gonna say I didn't know if you guys go to AMC's or not.
Yes, I am a Stubbs member.
I've heard many people complain about it enough that I understand it.
Gladiator maintained its spot at number 8 in week 7. Homestead from conservative studio Angel in its third week is at number 9. The Fire Inside, which no one gives two shits and a fuck about. Sorry, Clarissa Shields.
No one cares
And
about
it's-
Clarissa Shields, and boxing bent over backwards trying to make her a star, and now no one cares
in
about her
its second
biopic.
week is number 10. I mean, we vote with our wallets, people. Debuting, there was a re-release of Seven.
I really should have made a better effort to go find that.
Well,
That-
what was the anniversary of it? I mean, I'm assuming that's why it got re-released, or
I assume it doesn't say. It just says re-release.
Hang on, I'll find out.
That debuted at number 12. The Damned debuted at number 13. And that
Yeah,
was the weekend that
so
was.
Seven released in '95, so
oh, okay.
30 years.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to 2024 for just a sec. No, everything's pretty much where it was last week. Mufasa, Mufasa made it into the top 10. It knocked out Beetlejuice.
We're all not too surprised by that, but again, you're also dealing with a movie where a giant chunk of its box office returns are coming from locations where they get less money. So it's probably still not really
So
profitable.
that's at 4.7. It's almost tied with Venom.
I'm just noticing that the top, 15 movies, only one of them is not a sequel.
Oh yeah, I'm so
Yep.
tired of talking about that. We did this to ourselves. We get the media we deserve. So Mufasa made it into the top 10. There's movement. Wicked still at number 6. Moana 2 is at number 4.
Yeah, and
I
at
think
this
it's more
point,
hilarious what the top 5 are. You have
hang on.
Inside Out 2,
At this
Jet-
point, Wicked not catching Dune Part 2.
yeah, it's already, like I said, it's already out PVOD, both the sing along and the standard versions. I think we're done there. So Moana 2, just short of passing Despicable Me at about $9 million between them. So there's your top 10 for the year of our
Well,
Lord.
that means
2024.
Moana 2 might do it. Moana 2 might get above Despicable Me 4 when
Maybe.
it's all said and
Kids are
done.
back in school now. I don't know how many people are going to the movies anymore. So we have Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Despicable Me 4, Moana 2, Dune, Wicked, Godzilla, Kung Fu Panda, Venom, and Mufasa. So that's last year.
Yeah. For the record, I'd say Moana 2 it weighs on when it comes to Disney Plus. Despicable Me 4 is already on streaming, so I think it weighs on how much longer.
Despicable Me 4 came out in like June.
Yeah, so I think it weighs on how soon Disney Plus puts Moana 2 on streaming.
All right, so not a whole lot here in the first week of January, which would make
Hey, the 7 re-release.
It's the number 1 movie in the world, baby.
That's just sad.
The number 1 movie released in 2025.
All right, so not a whole lot here to talk about. We kind of did this last week, but it just, this Friday we've got Den of Thieves, Pantera, Walk, and then the following week we've got a lot. We've got Wolfman. That's going to be the big one in theaters. That'll be number 1 for its weekend. Got One of Them Days from TriStar. Netflix is back in action. Lionsgate, barely a studio, has a Sylvester Stallone movie called Alarum. There's a Paramount Plus movie, Harvey Danger the movie. Another Lionsgate. Lionsgate movies? This one directed by Julia Stiles. Hot damn. Called Wish You Were Here. And then we got Both Eyes Open.
If you're actually looking for a movie to watch this weekend, I heartily recommend Wallace and Gromit on Netflix.
Then we have
Zach and I'll be reviewing that as soon as I can find an open spot on the calendar for it.
The 24th, we have another Lionsgate. Well, Lionsgate just loads up the front of the year. You've got Flight
They
Risk.
know they have a bunch of crap, so they're dumping it in January.
You've got a Steven Soderbergh movie, Presence by Neon. It's a tidy little studio. You've got this direct coming out of Paramount Plus, Star Trek Section 31.
Boy, you know what? Let that be the last gasp of Kurtzman at Star Trek. It's going to bomb. It's going to fail. And now that Lower Decks has basically decanonized a bunch of stuff, now that Skydance owns.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who don't know, some behind-the-scenes drama related to Star Trek. There was a rights issue between Paramount and... what's the other studio?
Viacom.
Yeah, thank you. About which of them had the rights to which elements of Star Trek. And because Star Trek is one of those franchises where the merchandise is what really matters, there were specific rules in place about how different everything had to look so that there was no confusion about this. And it led to a lot of things. It led to the splintering of like, well, now we're in the alternate, we're in the Kelvin timeline, God help us. And this is where we get stuff like Star Trek Discovery, and which nobody likes.
My enduring memory of Kelsey was her telling me what a great show Star Trek is, and I've been reflecting on that recently, because there are elements of our culture, elements of our population in this country that are so desperate for everything to validate and represent them and to make them feel better about themselves, that they'll take things that are poorly written, poorly done, but they see themselves in it, and that is what makes it great. And
this is why
the fucking wall.
People, this is why representation doesn't matter the way they say it does. But anyway, now that Skydance Studios owns all of Star Trek, Lower Decks, the season finale, basically said, yeah, all that other stuff is taking place in an alternate timeline, so you can forget about it and we can ignore it. To the extent that anyone knows what Lower Decks is, because Star Trek is kind of just a dead
about
IP.
Why, when you break the fantasy, people just tune out. If you're wondering why your kids are watching endless amount of fucking YouTube videos and TikToks, it's because we've destroyed. I said it earlier today, and I stand by it. We have fucking murdered the culture in this country. The youth have taken to TikTok for entertainment because every time you get invested in fantasy, somebody comes along and destroys it on you. Like, why bother?
Well, look, man, over Mark, you and I are old enough to remember when there was a debate about whether Star Trek or Star Wars was the superior franchise.
Sure.
The fact that
I'm just going to lay my head down here. You two just keep talking.
The fact that nowadays the only argument is which of them has been destroyed more thoroughly is the status of our culture.
It's not really an argument I feel like having either. Like, a burnt body is a burnt body. I'm
not here to dispute either one. I'm just saying, like, that's where we are with this.
Right,
Star Trek's a dead IP, and this is the last gasp of a failed showrunner and a steward of the IP at something. And you know what? Apparently, Michelle Yeoh is making
$12 million
for that. And you know what? God bless her. Cash the check and laugh all the way to the bank.
Absolutely. Just cackle like the Wicked Witch of the West, Michelle Yeoh. You deserve it. Anyway, moving on. So we've also got Inheritance from IFC Films, a Neil Berger movie. Brave the Dark, yet another one from this conservative Angel studio. Into the Deep, which doesn't have a hyperlink. And my favorite movie of January coming up is Screamboat, which is, speaking of public domain, Steamboat Willie went into public domain not that long ago. And the first thing anyone thought to do with it was make it a horror movie. In fact, make it a slasher.
Popeye went into the public domain and they made Popeye a slasher because no one has the creative intelligence to go, we could make Popeye square off with Lovecraftian monstrosities of the deep because he's a sailor. Instead, he's just a Jason clone. And I spit on all of you.
Screamboat was actually made some time before the copyright expired. They literally waited. It's like, okay, let's make this film, but we can't release it. Exactly. We're going to make it and we're going to sit on it. And then when the copyright is free, we're going to be the first ones out of the gates.
At midnight, the night it expires, showing of Screamboat.
Did I tell you that my son came back when I was living with Melissa? My son came running into the room. He's like, I have a list of everything going into public domain and when. We can start this now. And he pitched me like this, like intense, gay, like drama between Daffy Duck and Donald Duck. And I was like, all right, let's start working on that. And when they're both in public domain, we can release it.
Your son disappoints me.
Ditto.
He is a scotch, just like his father, and he aims to irritate people. Anyway.
That's the wrong way to go about it.
I'm now scared that I suggested he come on the Lilo and Stitch discussion.
Oh, they're very excited about that. All right, there's an Amazon movie where it belongs called You're Cordially Invited. And then we end the
Stars
month.
Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon. Dear God, why?
It's about two wedding parties that accidentally get double booked for the same location. And
I don't care. I like Will
No, it's
Ferrell
so
Sounds
stupid.
and Reese Witherspoon is all I need to see there.
So, Robert, is there a reason why we chose to not do Companion? Or,
I don't
like,
know what it is.
That's the Jack Quaid movie where
Oh,
he's got the
yeah.
girl kidnapped.
Oh my God, I think we should do that. The trailer looks great.
It does look interesting, and I was thinking about this because I've seen the trailer now a couple of times, given what I've gone to the movies to see. And I think I might have asked you. I was like, "Oh, we have the Joel Schumacher focus." So I feel like we talked about this last week, and then somehow or other arrived at let's just leave it alone.
It got brief. I don't think you brought up Companions when we talked about that.
Maybe I might have forgotten to. I might have been focused on Dogman, and we're not going to do that. But yeah,
we did laugh at that.
Like, how the hell are we not doing Companion?
I am perfectly fine with doing that.
I want in.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'll move Joel Schumacher to some other time and place. Okay.
Oh, by the way, I got Zach on the line here. February 4th for the Wallace and Gromit review.
I can't do two things at once.
Sorry.
Sorry. Give me a minute. Companion. That's weird. Like I don't understand how why we just didn't decide to do that the first time around.
I've never seen a trailer for it, so I can't.
Oh,
it's not
there was
anywhere
a
in my
trailer
head.
for it before Nosferatu.
Not in my theater.
Showed a woman being chained at a table. She puts her hand over a candle and holds it there, and her arm bursts into flames.
Not in my theater.
Okay.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, like I said, it's been in a couple of different movies I've seen.
Couldn't. I have not seen it. I can't. Otherwise, I would have maybe been more attentive to bringing it up, but I was not aware of its existence.
When we're done here, look up the trailer real quick, and then
Okay.
And then give me some feedback.
Okay.
I'll figure out another time. I'm not gonna move it right now. I don't want to take showtime to figure this out, but I'll move the Schumacher thing to.
Yeah. Here, you know what? I actually I'll send you the trailer.
To answer your question, there's nothing on the 4th. You can take that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not putting it on the calendar right now. All right, so that's January. All of that to say, I think the only thing making any money of note in the month of January is going to be Wolfman.
Probably.
Wolfman. So, all right, anything else before we move on to the final portion of our show?
It just makes me laugh that we see a film that's so intense like this, and then you realize Robert Eggers is apparently laid back enough. He actually did an interview and said he was grateful that SpongeBob SquarePants introduced a whole younger generation to Nosferatu.
That is the thing he said.
I know. I saw the clip, but it was just like, I watched your movie, and then you say this. It doesn't seem like you're the kind of person who would say that.
Yeah, you'd never know Junji Ito makes nightmare fuel if you met him either, so who knows.
There you go.
Okay, Mark, there's an episode, because you looked confused there. There's an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants that uses a few images from the original Nosferatu movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of people's first exposure was that, because it's just Orlok in a doorway, and it's just a still image, basically.
It's just a gag. It's just a...
It's SpongeBob, so it's a throwaway gag, but that was, in fact, for a lot of people, the first time they were made aware of the existence of this IP. So
I know Alexis doesn't unless I order her to doesn't go back and listen to any of our shows, and she does not listen to anything that doesn't necessarily deal with the movie stuff. So I did want to share with you something, Alexis, before we move on to the next segment. Do you know what the number one listen to on Spreaker, or the number one audio podcast we've ever done for Damn You Hollywood is?
Is it Metal Hammer? It's Metal Hammer of Doom, isn't it?
No, Damn You Hollywood.
Oh, Damn You Hollywood. No, I don't.
Sponge on the Run. I think back then you were advertising a lot in like the cartoon Facebook groups, and that apparently got us a huge audience, because that is to this day, because Jesse asked me about it when we did sessions when we were talking about Damn You Hollywood, And he was like, "So what's your most number one listen to Damn You Hollywood ever?" And I was like, oddly enough, Sponge on the Run.
I've gone a little easy on advertising in that because last time I did that, I got someone on the show who I really don't want to have on the show again. Not Zach, someone else.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about. All right. With that said, that little bit of passive aggressiveness out of the way, here we are with the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, there you have it. The tomato meter, it has it at 85% fresh. The audience score is 74. We dig into this a little bit. All critics brings it to 85, and then top critics is 82. All audience is 71. Verified audience is 74.
Yeah, that's about right.
And the AI writes, marvelously orchestrated by Robert Eggers, Nosferatu is a behemoth of a horror film that is equal parts repulsive and seductive. That's what all the girls say about me at the swinger party house. Did you know that, Alexis? I am both equal parts seductive and repulsive.
Well, like I said, there's a large amount of
tracks.
women who are attracted to monsters.
What were you trying to say, Robert? You cheeky
No, that tracks. You saying I'm equal parts compelling and repulsive. That tracks.
Seductive, and repulsive. I lean into it. Anyway, speaking of leaning in,
You lean into something, all right.
Abby Bernstein of Assignment X, a handsome, well-plotted period vampire movie.
Boring.
Wow. See Russia from your house there, can you?
Sarah Mars of Laney Gossip, a jewel box of horror occupied by mostly lifeless dolls.
Yeah, no. Because the men are men, she couldn't understand it.
And because the women aren't just running around screaming their heads off like something out of a Wes Craven film.
God, I hate it does that. Let's see here. Rick Joswiak of Esquire magazine, formerly a magazine. This goth symphony of murder and despair is arranged within inches of its life, and there's little soul to spare.
That is a tortured metaphor you were drawing there, buddy. Like that didn't fit.
Jim Shembry of JimShembry.com. All right. Everybody can do.
No,
I'm sorry,
not
you were
today.
waiting for a joke?
Yeah,
He knows what he knows what I want.
I do.
He doesn't give me what I want all the time, and so I have to see what he's gonna do. Because who knows? Everybody could do with more quality sleep, and the surest way to get that is to buy a ticket to the umpteenth remake of a Dracula story.
Oh, for God's sake.
Gloomy, slow, and not at all scary. Director Robert Eggers struggles to bring new energy to this expensive rehash.
This guy liked Dracula 2000, didn't he?
Probably.
Almost as much as you like Dracula 3000 would be my guess.
Dustin Chang of Floating World. Even the sex and nudity can't liven up this dull, sodden version of this story.
You people, anything that doesn't jingle keys, I swear for some of these guys.
I was going to say, it's like, what the hell?
Michael Bay ruined a generation of film critics. I maintain that.
Dennis Harvey of 48 Hills. Arguably the year's most impeccably crafted disappointment.
That is one of those hills you'll be dying on alone, sir. Anyone who said, okay, I can't get on him too much, but like calling this movie a disappointment, I don't know what your expectations were.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm just annoyed with the amount of people who were calling it dull and boring. It's like, okay, look, if you're complaining about the color, I can't help you. Robert Eggers thrives on low saturation in his films. He has in every single one. I mean, hell, The Lighthouse is in black and white. And yeah, it's not like a major action movie. It takes its time. The pacing in this movie is brilliant. It's slow, but it's brilliant.
The people who can't differentiate between badly paced and deliberately paced is shockingly high.
Unfortunately.
Shannon Connellan of Mashable. Despite creative approaches to the lore, Nosferatu left my thirst for the darkest unquenched.
What a terrible sentence. I mean, it's on a prose level. What a terrible sentence.
I'm sorry. I'm reading that. All I can think is this is probably somebody who liked Hellraiser Hellworld.
Mark won't understand how big of an insult that is, but I do.
I knew you would. That was the point.
All right. Stephanie Malone of Morbidly Beautiful. Oh, you sweet thing, you. Exquisite craftsmanship elevates this haunting gothic tale. Nosferatu is a spellbinding achievement that demands you succumb to its charms. Eggers has crafted not just a worthy adaptation of a classic, but also a new classic in its own right.
Not wholly wrong, but that's a little bit over
crazy.
the top.
Yeah, little tick birdish.
Hey, look, there was Jeff.
Yeah, he didn't say anything bad or good. Just that's fine.
Sorry, Jeff, you're being ignored.
Yeah. Ollie Welsh of Polygon. It has no fresh blood in its veins. You people make me sick.
You people make me wonder why you're getting paid and we're not.
Travis Hobson, Punch Drunk Critics, my favorite punching bag. It's an immaculately crafted, chilling vampire story with a frightening monster at its core, even if some of the characters' work around it feels a bit off.
You know, in fairness to the point there, look, Lily Rose Depp did a great job of kind of getting back towards my good side with this. But the difference in her acting ability between when she gets to go full crazy hysteria versus when she has to be more quiet and subtle is pretty stark, and not in a good way. She's not as good at the subtle, relatable style of acting.
You know, I'm reading just a handful I'm reading a handful of these, the rotten ones that you're scrolling past. I am really getting disturbed how many of them are using this. It has no fresh blood. It's bloodless. There's nothing in its veins. It's like, oh my God. Like, literally, is that the only analogy you people could think of for a vampire movie?
Well, it's the only one the AI that they fed this into could come up with. See, a clever writer might have done something with how it can't really survive in the light, or it doesn't stand up to that kind of scrutiny. But no, it's just, well, there's no beating heart at the center of this monstrosity. Like, just shut up.
Nicholas Bella, Fish Jelly Films, YouTube. Because sure. Edgar squanders a novel opportunity in donating fresh blood to this Nosferatu of Ur with this bone-dry God excursion, which is never as decadent or daring as it could be, especially for those familiar with its predecessor.
Because this is not meant to be an over-the-top, decadent variation of Dracula, you buffoon.
You know, it's been a while since the reviews read on this have made me want to slit my wrist, but my God,
well, then there'd be fresh blood.
Boy, you know, City of God sure did miss an opportunity to explore the cosmopolitan side of Brazilian culture. Like, get the fuck out of here.
All right, and I think we're done.
Moron.
Did you see, you scrolled past it, but I saw there was one that it was a link. It was literally the link to his review. It's like, how the fuck did that get so badly squandered?
Best friend of the show and fan, Liam Bibiani of The Wrap, top critic.
Oh, now he's a fan.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't know it
all
yet.
Our merch.
Booster of Damn You Hollywood, William Bibiani of The Wrap, top critic. This Count Orlok is a gruesome monstrosity, gnawed on and gnarled, as repulsive as movie monsters get. But he's now also that sexual creature, a hyper-masculine 1970s porn star, as virile as he is virulent.
It's a bit much.
He sleeps in the nude. Get over it.
William Bibiani.
The fact that the only thing you can think of associated with that kind of a mustache is a 1970s porn star just makes me shake my
William
head.
Bibiani gets stuck on a thing. Like I listen to enough critically acclaimed, and my heart goes out to Whitney at times because William Bibiani just gets stuck on a thing, and there is just no talking to him. Like he cannot be reasoned with. He is just like nope. Like and he'll back off just enough to be like, I'm willing to agree to disagree, but that's as far as he goes, and he just like obsesses over certain like weird sexual stuff. It's funny to listen to. So
Funny's
obsessing
one
over,
word.
huh?
Funny's one word.
Sure. Well, obsessing over weird sexual stuff is the phrase that pays here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. So that brings us to the end of our review.
It's certainly been brought up more than once.
So that was our review of Nosferatu. Tomorrow, Alexis is hosting a TV party for Hell of a Boss Season 2, Part 2. Is that right?
Yeah. The show was so spaced out that there was a particularly long break between the first 7 episodes and the final 5. So we're going to be discussing the final 5 episodes of Season 2 plus the 4 shorts that were also released this year.
And then Thursday, we will be speaking of Lower Decks. Myself and David Wright will be finishing up our Season 5 review of Star Trek Lower Decks, and then that's another show I can finally put to bed and I don't have to watch anymore. Hooray!
Then Mark can get back to watching Season 1 of The West Wing and wanting to pull his beard out.
Next week, speaking of wanting to pull his beard out, myself and Robert Winfree will be doing a triple feature for The Last Showgirl, Nora, and Amelia Perez as we start to get moved towards our Oscar show. So we're gonna try to anticipate as many of these Oscar nominations as possible and review many of them beforehand, so we don't have to spend 8 hours on the one show reviewing everything for the first time. That is my goal.
And in pursuit of that goal, he has decided to torture me with some of the worst, just the worst shows imaginable.
Speaking of the worst show imaginable, Alexis will be doing a TV party for Creature Commandos. And then a week from Thursday, the aforementioned West Wing.
I would say a week from Tuesday. I'm doing like the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st. So
yeah, I'm only going out 2 weeks here, kiddo.
Okay.
And then on Thursday the 16th, I'll be on Movies That Don't Suck and Son That Do their year-end show. So if you haven't heard my top 10, you can hear it on theirs. So that's where I'll be doing it. But then also, I got double duty that night. Myself, Andrew Graham, Jesse Starcher, and in theory, Dorian Price, if he has working equipment, will be on The West Wing, Season 1. Where I can talk endlessly about how you should not tell a black man how to be a good black leader. What a great line that was. Also, John Spencer, fantastic. Just best part of that show.
Left us way too soon, that man did. He was a quality actor.
So we just got a comment here. I started to read it. I figured I'll just throw it on here since we're at the end of the show. I think the theater I saw it in had a projector issue. I could barely see anything in Count Orlok's castle. It was very difficult to see any dark scenes. All right.
You know what? As a general, okay, I did not have this problem. So let me preface this what I'm about to say with that. I actually deeply appreciated the fact that all of the dark scenes were so easy to read. But if you were at a place that had a minor technical issue, this would have turned into a nightmare. Like, you really do need things to be functioning properly. But
I'll say I've seen more than a fair share of movies where it's clear they either lowered the contrast or upped the brightness on the camera because the darkness just kind of blurs into it. So that can be a severe pain.
Speaking of severe pains, why don't you tell us what you're plugging these days?
I hate you so much. All right. Yes. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. We're in our off season right now, taking a little time off from the con circuit, but we will be heading back to that the last weekend of February / the first weekend of March, we'll be doing Missouri Paracon. That's Missouri's paranormal convention. We're going to be bringing all of our Clue jewelry for that. Looking forward to it. And in the meantime, of course, we are still available on Etsy and handmade at Amazon. I'm currently uploading a bunch of new stuff. I was supposed to start doing that today, but we're currently covered with about a foot of snow, and it's just a little hard to get stuff done when you can't actually go outside, especially when I don't have a working car right now because someone decided to run a red light.
Well,
But
I'm glad you're safe and you didn't get hurt.
no, thankfully, no one was hurt. And thankfully, he admitted it was his fault, so I get insurance payout. So... But
Insurance companies are kind of the worst in general, so I'm glad that went smoothly.
Tell me about it. But yeah, so like I said, we got a ton of stuff, including a lot of fun horror items. Again, we are on Etsy and handmade at Amazon. You can always find us on Facebook, Instagram. Whoop, lost my screen there for a second. Blue Sky, screw you, Twitter, and TikTok. Again, that's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
Robert, show us where you pissed from.
Well, I would, but Count Orlok made me feel insecure about that, so I'll be keeping my clothing on.
Snort.
Again, you take my job, I have to take yours. It doesn't work for both. It doesn't work for both you, and it doesn't work for both me. So,
Fair enough.
You guys are the kind who went to go see Watchmen and wouldn't stop giggling at Dr. Manhattan's butt.
I had no problems with that, actually. Like, again, I'm doing this as part of the shtick because Mark took my job, so I have to take his. And to potentially annoy Ronnie Adams of the Streaming Boy podcast. See, I have to do your gimmick now, and it pains my soul, Mark. Can we go back?
Okay. Can I do your gimmick and do 29 minutes of fucking plugs?
You already did. You already did, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. I covered Wrestle Dynasty on Saturday, which was a bit of an up and down show, but Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd, absolutely worth the price of admission. I covered WWE SmackDown on Fridays, which is 3 hours at the moment, and apparently at some point in the future is going back to 2 hours. Who knows? It's variable. Shrug. And this Saturday will be the first UFC event of 2025, and boy, does it suck on paper. Terrible event. I have a full preview of it over on the 411 Ground & Pound MMA podcast, where I preview that, talk a little bit about some of the news in the combat sports world. So if you're interested in any and all of that, give me a listen over there if you're so inclined. And yeah, next week I will be... I'll do something because boy, do I not want to be there.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us for the first Damn You Hollywood of the Year proper. It's a good show. Hopefully, it's a good sign of things to come. Probably not. Be well. Be safe. Well, actually, for Alexis Hejna, for Robert Winfree, I didn't cough nearly as much as I thought I was going to, and I'm hopefully on the
we're out of here. We're out of here in under 2 hours.
That was the goal. In 2025, we don't go past 2 hours. Be well.
Ooh, challenge accepted.
Jesus
Fuck
Christ.
off. Be well. Be safe and behave.